Every year, there's at least one movie that gets hyped up to high heaven by critics and film festivals as the masterpiece of the year, maybe even of the decade. And from the stills and the footage that I see of it, it looks visually stunning. And I'm at least mildly interested in the story, but the main thing driving anyone's interest in the movie is the hype around it being some sort of groundbreaking masterpiece. However, oftentimes when I finally watch these types of movies, I'm incredibly underwhelmed. There's usually a few outstanding technical achievements, but the movie, taken as a whole, especially as a storytelling vehicle, isn't that impressive to anyone not trying to look like a pretentious film snob. The first movie I remember seeing of this nature was Boyhood. Everyone praised it for being an astounding achievement for following one character over the course of his life, and using one actor to do so over the course of several decades. It was a stunning achievement to be sure, but the problem with it was that the story and the characters were just not good. It's been years since it came out, and I doubt anyone who watched it can tell you what actually happened in the plot of Boyhood. Movies like Boyhood seem to come out every year, and every year I always fall for the gimmick, watch it anyway, and leave disappointed and frustrated. I call these types of movies golden turds. The reason we're here today is because I believe that the Netflix original movie Roma is the golden turd of 2018. I had every reason to be excited for this movie. It was directed by the guy who made Children of Men and Gravity, and I liked both of those movies even if Gravity did have its fair share of flaws. And I did tell people that I was excited about Roma, but deep down I knew that was a lie. I had been on this roller coaster before and I could already see the signs. Just watching the trailer for Roma gave me a sinking feeling as I dreaded the possibility of watching yet another movie that did not live up to its critical acclaim. Unfortunately, my suspicions were correct. Within the first 15 minutes, I realized that Roma was a golden turd, and by the 30-minute mark, I was bored stiff. Now don't get me wrong, I think this movie is visually and technically impressive. It's beautiful, brilliantly acted, and it has a great sound design, but beyond that, this movie fails at a very important part of every movie: telling a story. Now, that isn't to say that I think nothing happens in this movie, because this movie does have a story, and it's a pretty good one. Spoiler alert, because I feel in order to give this movie a fair shake, I want to describe the entire story really quick. This movie is about a maid and the family she works for. The husband of the family she works for goes on a business trip of some sort. After this, the maid gets pregnant, she tells her boyfriend and her boyfriend leaves her. The maid then tries to find her boyfriend, but he tells her to fuck off. It turns out that the husband of the family she works for wasn't actually on a business trip, but was actually cheating on his wife. After that, the maid has a stillborn child, and finally the family takes the maid to a beach where she admits she didn't even want the child to be born. There is nothing wrong with the story on paper. It sounds like a pretty good 90-minute drama. But that's the problem, because this movie is well over 2 hours. It's about 45 minutes longer than it actually needs to be. What fills up most of the runtime between actual events in the story can only be best described as scenes and shots so self-indulgent that it might as well have been a movie about the director jerking himself off. Take this shot, for example. This is a long panning shot that spins around the room as the maid turns out all the lights in the house. It looks beautiful, but the problem is that what's actually happening in the shot doesn't advance the story at all. This wouldn't be a problem in any other movie, but here it's dragged out for what seems like forever. This shot is actually only about 40 or 50 seconds long, but the first time you watch it, it feels like it takes forever to end. The shot adds nothing to the movie's story, characters, or themes. It actually doesn't need to be there at all, and it certainly doesn't need to be this long. We don't need this shot, and we certainly don't need to see what's happening in this shot. Its only purpose is for the director to get compliments about his fantastic filmmaking ability, and it is fantastic. However, that's really the only reason the shot is in this movie, just to look pretty. This is just one example of the many scenes in this movie that are exactly like this. Nothing happens in the scene, but it's still there because the director wants you to stroke his dick. Now, I do understand that this movie setting has some significance to the director's own life, and he wanted to show how special it is for him, but my point still stands. The movie indulges in itself way too much for its own good. When there's not a pointless scene, there are shots within scenes that go on for way too long. Take out all of this filler and you'd have a good 90-minute drama, but the director simply couldn't resist showing off his skills to the detriment of the movie. I don't see why this sort of self-indulgence is necessary with this director. He's proven with his other films just how impressive he is behind the camera. The only difference being that the long shots and scenes in those movies are actually enjoyable because they serve a purpose within the story and aren't just there to look pretty. I'm very disappointed that this movie is getting as praised as it is. Many people who think they're above simple-minded and easily pleased moviegoers will laugh this golden turd of a movie up like a dog eating moldy, leftover lasagna that's been sitting in the fridge for months. It's frustrating that those same people would refuse to call something like Into the Spider-Verse or Mission Impossible Fallout masterpieces just because they're action or comic book movies, but praise Roma like the second coming of Christ despite it being a bloated, boring mess of a story. The praise behind this movie is a circle jerk of pretentiousness that I just can't get behind. Movies like Roma serve as a yearly reminder of how pretentious and stuck up our own asses the film community can be. If you like this movie, that's fine. I'm not trying to diss you. You probably have your own valid reasons, and I respect that. But it left me disappointed and frustrated knowing that I had just watched another golden turd. I'm Randall the Vandal, and thank you for watching.